welcome to America After the Civil Rights Movement. This is the second lecture in that first week of framing the readings. This brings us to Montgomery in 1955 in December. It's a city where a young Martin Luther King has come. He's 26 years old, and he is, considered to be an extraordinary orator, but yet, a political neophyte. He's kind of a rookie on the scene of how to navigate Southern politics. The scene in the South is one that is largely managed by large black landowners and their white counterparts who are far wealthier than they in many cases. You have black physicians, black attorneys, black church leaders, and young ministers are largely on the outside of how the power structure is supposed to work. You also have in Montgomery at the time an organizer who works part-time as a seamstress, but also as part of her time as an investigator in cases of sexual violence against women in the Montgomery area, who helping to register voters, a very consistent member of the local NAACP chapter, which for much of the 1950s was deemed to be an illegal organization by the state of Alabama. And that's Rosa Parks. Incidentally, Rosa Parks was 42 years old when she did her part to help initiate the Montgomery bus boycott. She's the same age that I am now at that time, right? We tend to think about Rosa as being some old woman, but she was a young, early 40-something who, again, had a great deal of experience as an organizer and as an activist, but had enough to know that she was very much fed up with the evils of Jim Crow. Now, it's important to keep in mind that the effort to boycott the buses in Montgomery was not a popular movement at the time. In fact, many black elites around the country overtly denounced the Montgomery bus boycott because boycotts in the South were, again, in many state constitutions deemed illegal. You weren't supposed to be organizing to somehow, diminish economic growth or, adversely affect a business person. That was considered to be beyond the pale. And so you have many African Americans who are operating in southern cities who are telling people to not only denounce what's happening in Montgomery, but don't get any ideas about doing certain things like the Montgomery bus boycott in their own city. One example comes from a group in Miami called the Adelphia Club, and this is what they're writing in their paper at the time of the Montgomery bus boycott. Number one, join no boycott movement. Two, obey state laws regarding segregation until they are changed. The passive voice there. We don't know who's going to do the changing. And point three, support all legal moves by Negro organizations to end segregation. So operate exclusively within the confines of the law. And that was published in the Black newspaper in Miami in 1956. Ultimately, the case goes before the Supreme Court, and in the case Browder versus Gale in 1956, bus segregation is deemed unconstitutional and a violation of the 14th Amendment. So we're already 2 years from the Brown decision, and you still have to have mass direct action in order to have the law of the land be enforced. The Montgomery bus boycott is considered to be important in part because it helps to crystallize how you can use nonviolent direct action, in this case in Montgomery, over 381 days, to then bring an end to segregation in that local context. So it's a nonviolent movement that is done in a large scale, in a locality that's meant to break the back of Jim Crow. And as we think about the nature of the movement, I just want to have us meditate for a moment on what it means to create and organize a struggle with carpools and meetings and bake sales as fundraisers and an extraordinary amount of coordination that brings people like Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King, but also scores of other people to the table as co-organizers and conspirators to basically topple Jim Crow segregation. And so it is going to be important as we think about what some of the less grassroots elements are in the context of the Jim Crow world that would make a mass movement like Montgomery the exception more than the rule. Make a mass boycott like Montgomery the exception more than the rule. All right. So in lecture 2, we'll get much more into the details of some of the political dynamics that made direct action such a rare but important and powerful tool in the struggle for civil rights.